Hi, I'll pick up where I left off in the last video on this masterclass from Bach on Mozart's Sonata in B-flat major. So I'll move on to bar 33. And this is paragraph 10 from the chapter on appoggiaturas. Diese veränderlichen Vorschläge von unten kommen nicht leicht anders vor, als wenn sie die vorige Note wiederholen. Die aber von oben trifft man auch außerdem an. Now the appoggiatura, the first one in bar 33, is not necessarily a long appoggiatura, given it's a short note and it's not legato, and the tempo is not proportioned. But it is an appoggiatura from below, and it is repeating the preceding note, just like, you know, Bach is saying there in that paragraph. And that as well can be seen in bar 102. Paragraph 14 from the chapter on appoggiaturas. Manchmal muss wegen gewisser Ursachen in einem Gesange die Resolution abgebrochen werden. Allda muss der Vorschlag auch ganz kurz sein. Tab 4 C. So this will apply to the second appoggiatura in bar 33. And you can see that the resolution of the melody is broken off. And so that appoggiatura, according to Bach, will also be short. And so he says, because of certain circumstances. And I'll just read the appendix to the footnote to tab 4. C. Dieser Vorschlag, welcher bloß der Resolution wegen hingesetzt worden ist, muss deswegen ganz kurz sein, damit die Hauptnote, welche diese Freiheit verursacht hat und daher allezeit von besonderem Gewichte ist, wenig oder nichts verliere. So, the note that causes this liberty is of particular weight, and so it's important it loses as little as possible. And here, you know, in the example that Bach provided, he says that the appoggiatura is there because of the resolution, which is not the same as the resolution to the melody. And Mozart has that appoggiatura there for different reasons. And if you were to look at that melody in bar 33 and think how it might be resolved, or be the resolution to that melody. And if you think going to the C, if Mozart was to go to the C after that D in the second half of the bar, what he'd get there would be forbidden octaves, so consecutive parallel octaves. So you have the D in the left hand and a D in the right hand going to a C in the left hand, and again as well a C in the right hand, and that would make for a bad singing line. And so on the one hand, Mozart is adding that appoggiatura to break off the resolution of the melody, avoid the parallel octave, and as well he's keeping the range, preventing it from sort of getting ridiculously high up. If he was to go up to the F, that next C in the next bar would be an octave higher. So he's keeping it within a reasonable range, the music too. And so deliberately, that appoggiatura there is to avoid consecutive octaves. And the F then is of particular weight, and that's why it can't lose its value, because you'll detract from the weight of that note. And here's the appendix to paragraph 13 from the chapter on trills. Ein Triller ohne folgende Noten, zum Exempel am Ende, über einer Fermate und so weiter, hat alle Zeit einen Nachschlag. And so if you look at the trill in bar 33, and as well this will apply to the trill in bar 102, you can see that trill doesn't have a following note. What follows is a rest. And Bach says these trills always have a Nachschlag, or an afterstroke, or a turn at the end of it. And what as well applies here, like I've said, that trill will begin on the second above the tone. So the second note of F major will be a G, or the second note in the scale of F major after that G will be an A. So that's the second above the tone. And here's the paragraph 13 on the chapter on trills. Wenn nach der Note mit dem Triller ein Sprung folgt, Figur 27a, so findet der Nachschlag auch statt. So in the case of that trill in bar 33, not only does it have no folgende Note, follows it as a rest, but after that rest is a leap. So trills where a leap follows also have a Nachschlag. So these are on the pros list for your decision is into wondering, is that actually the correct answer? And so if you're looking at the Roll of Honour at Lilliput and what they do, and if you see them play a trill without a Nachschlag, or without a turn, or without an afterstroke, you can clock down as that yet another thing they don't do. And what would Mozart do? How would Mozart have played that? So now I'll look at bars 42, 43 and 44. And here's paragraph 13 from the chapter on trills. Wenn die Noten kurz sind, so leidet ihn, so the Nachschlag, eine drauffolgende steigende Sekunde allezeit eher, B, als eine fallende. So, what Bach is saying that the trills over short notes rather suit an ascending second, a steigende Sekunde, than a fallende Sekunde, a descending second. And so you can see in these bars 42, 43 and 44, those trills, what's following those trills is fallende Sekunde, or a descending second. So the C is a descending second. The D turns that C into a fallende Sekunde, or descending second. The same in bar 43. The C going to the B flat. The B flat is the fallende Sekunde, or descending second. The next one is a B flat going to the A, so the A is a fallende Sekunde. And then you have in bar 44, the trill over the A, and that's going to the G, and the G is a fallende Sekunde. So none of those trills suit a Nachschlag or an afterstroke. So you can probably gather that there can't be a afterstroke or Nachschlag on with those trills, since they're short notes where there's a directly ensuing fallende Sekunde. And this is paragraph 16 from the chapter on trills. Die Triller ohne Nachschlag lieben eine heruntergehende Folge. Figur 28a und kommen überhaupt über kurze Noten vor. B. So these trills do have a descending continuation. So you think, yeah, trills without a Nachschlag, love that. So what would you think then? What's a trill without a Nachschlag? You'll think the Prall-Trill is a trill without a Nachschlag. Great. So, first of all, given the speed, the shortness, the brevity of those notes, will you be able to play more notes than the notes that a Prall-Trill contains in that space? And so I'll read paragraph 30, 31, 32 and 34 from the chapter on trills as an however as to why the Prall-Trill might not be the answer for what one is meant to do for those trills. Der halbe oder Prall-Triller, welche durch seine Schärfe und Kürze sich von den übrigen Trillern unterscheidet, wird von den Klavierspielern der bei Figur 45 befindlichen Abbildung gemäß bezeichnet. Wir finden allda auch seine Ausnahme vorgestellt. Ungeachtet sich bei dieser der oberste Bogen von Anfänge bis zu Ende erstreckt, so werden doch alle Noten bis auf das letzte F angeschlagen, welches durch einen neuen Bogen so gebunden ist, dass es ohne Anschlag liegen bleiben muss. Dieser große Bogen bedeutet also bloß die nötige Schleifung. Durch diesen Triller wird die vorhergehende Note an die folgende gezogen. Also kommt niemals bei gestoßenen Noten vor. Stellt in der Kürze einen durch einen Vorschlag oder durch eine Hauptnote an die folgende angeschlossenen Triller ohne Nachschlag vor. Dieser Triller ist die unentbehrlichste und angenehmste, aber auch dabei die schwerste Manier. Kommt entweder gar nicht zum Gehör oder auf eine lahme und unausstehliche Weise, welche seinem natürlichen Wesen entgegen ist, wenn man ihn nicht vollkommen gut macht. Man kann ihn daher aus seinen Schülern nicht wohl langsam weisen, wie die übrigen Manieren. Muss recht prahlen. Der zuletzt angeschlagene, oberste Ton von diesem Triller wird geschnellt. Dieses Schnellen allein macht ihn wirklich und geschieht mit der im 7. oder 8. Paragraph angeführten Art und mit einer außerordentlichen Geschwindigkeit, so, dass man Mühe hat, alle Noten in diesem Triller zu hören. Hieraus entsteht eine gar besondere Schärfe, gegen welche auch der schärfste Triller von anderer Art in keinem Vergleich kommt. Dieser Triller kann daher ebenso wohl wie die kurzen Vorschläge über einer geschwinden Note vorkommen, welche dem ungeachtet nicht verhindern darf, dass dieser Triller deswegen doch so hurtig gemacht werden muss, dass man glauben sollte, die Note, worüber angebracht wird, verlöre nicht das geringste hierdurch an ihrer Geltung, sondern träfe auf einen Punkt zur rechten Zeit ein. Daher muss nicht so fürchterlich klingen, als aussehen würde, wenn man alle Nötigen von ihm alle Zeit ausschreiben wollte. Macht den Vortrag besonders lebhaft und glänzend. Man könnte allenfalls, wenn es sein müsste, eher eine andere Manier oder auch die übrigen Arten von Trillern missen und den Vortrag so einrichten, dass man ihnen aus dem Wege gehen und andere, leichtere Manieren an ihre Stellen setzen könnte. Nur ohne den Prall-Triller kann niemand zurechtkommen. Und wenn alles Übrige noch so gut ausgeführt worden wäre, so würde man dennoch bei dem Mangel an diesem Triller nicht zufrieden sein können. Dieser Prall-Triller kann nicht anders als vor einer fallenden Sekunde vorkommen. Sie mag nun durch einen Vorschlag oder eine große Note entstehen. Figur 47. Man findet ihn über kurzen Noten A oder solchen, welche durch einen Vorschlag kurz werden B. Deswegen, wenn auch über vermehrende Noten vorzukommen pflegt, so hält man den Vorschlag ganz lang und schnappt hernach ganz kurz mit diesem Triller ab, indem man den Finger von der Taste entfernt. C. So you can see in these bars that while the notes are indeed slurred or legato, that the trill doesn't come before the fallende Sekunde. So in the case of 42, the fallende Sekunde would be the C. And if there was a trill sign, we were to play the Prall-Trill before that C, what would happen is you'd play the Prall-Trill and the last note of that Prall-Trill would be tied to the C, to the main note. So the Prall-Trill would become before the fallende Sekunde. And since the note over which the trill, Mozart writes the trill, repeats the preceding note, one can rule out the Prall-Trill for these trills. And we haven't covered yet what one could do in the place, what ornament would fit here in these situations. We can rule out the Prall-Trill. And so here's 58. And this is paragraph 16 from the chapter on trills. Die Triller ohne Nachschlag lieben eine heruntergehende Folge. Figur 28a. So, trills without a Nachschlag love a descending continuation. So, wenn viele Triller hintereinander gehen, C, wenn eine oder mehrere kurze Noten drauf folgen, welche die Stelle des Nachschlags vertreten können, D, so bleibt der letztere auch weg. So you have a continuing descending sequence and you have a swift continuation that can take the place of the regular Nachschlag. So that becomes the new Nachschlag or afterstroke to that trill. paragraph 13 from the chapter on trills. Bach is saying with regard to the figure D, da bei ganz langsamer Zeitmaß folgende Arten Noten D einen Nachschlag vertragen, ungeachtet die geschwinde Folge nach den Punkten die Stelle eines Nachschlags vertreten könnte. So sieht man hieraus, dass bloß eine fallende Sekunde diesem Nachschlage am meisten zuwider ist. So in the case of D, what would the fallende Sekunde be? So you see the trill is on a G, and the fallende Sekunde, or the descending second, would be an F. So Bach is saying the only case where the Nachschlag or the afterstroke is which would be opposed to that Nachschlag would be a case of a descending second or a fallende Sekunde. And you can see in bar 58 and 60, the trill is on the E flat, and the next note is a fallende Sekunde or a descending second. It's the D, and that's opposed to this Nachschlag. So that would be why, if anybody is wondering, hey, how come you say the trill in bar 1 should have a Nachschlag and the trill in bar 58 doesn't? That is why. And again in paragraph 14, Bach said, punktierte Noten, worauf eine Kürze im Hinaufgehen folgt, leiden auch Triller mit dem Nachschlage. So he says, dotted notes where a short ascending note follows suffer a trill with a Nachschlag. And here's a case where there is no such thing as a throwaway sentence from Bach, that those, like a subclause, is not to be glossed over. There's important, vital information in the smallest details in what Bach says that can be the difference of understanding, either not understanding it or understanding it, and forming the big picture, and knowing how all these things fit together, and how all what would seem like contradictions are saying the one thing and the other, and how come there's so many exceptions. It's these details that order the big picture. And so then in bar 58 and 60 there's the trill at the end of the bar over the A. And there you can see it's over a fallende Sekunde. So you could think that could be a case where you could play the Prall-Trill. But as well, in bar 58, if you can consider paragraph 13 from the chapter on trills, wenn die Noten kurz sind, so leidet ihnen eine drauffolgende steigende Sekunde allezeit eher B als eine fallende. And you can see in the case of 58 that what follows is a steigende Sekunde or an ascending second. So the trill is on the A and what follows is a B flat. And so you could think that this is the A is a short note. And so when the notes are short, they do suffer a trill with a Nachschlag when the following note is an ascending second. So potentially one could play a trill with a Nachschlag over that A. And I didn't. I have played the Prall-Trill for both. And when one looks at bar 60, one would then, if one was to play the trill with a Nachschlag or an afterstroke in bar 58, what you'd be playing in bar 60 would be a Prall-Trill, because the note, it's a trill over a short note, and the following note is a fallende Sekunde or a descending second. So a G follows the A, and the A turns that G into a descending second or a fallende Sekunde. That would be that doesn't suffer a trill with a Nachschlag. So you wouldn't play a trill with a Nachschlag, but potentially you could in bar 58. And I didn't, because for one thing, honestly I didn't try a trill with a Nachschlag there, because I had it in my mind to play a Prall-Trill. That's one. The Prall-Trill was not so wrong that I thought I'd better try something else because this doesn't work. That was another thing. The Prall-Trill as well effectively separates, you can see in the next bar that Mozart has slurred, put a bow over the notes following, and you can see in what Bach said in paragraph 14 in the chapter on trills. Anstatt dass sonst die letzte Note von den Nachschlägen allezeit in der größten Geschwindigkeit mit der folgenden verbunden wird, F. So, playing the Nachschlag, verbinding it with the greatest speed to the following note, I had a feeling that it's not separating then that note from the following note, whereas a Prall-Trill does, since it creates the illusion that the note over which the Prall-Trill is before which the Prall-Trill is played, that note loses little to nothing of its value, even though it does lose something of its value. That creates a suitable gap. But I would not say that a trill with a Nachschlag is wrong there. So that would be open for you to try yourselves and see how it works. So, with regard to the Prall-Trill and the Prall-Trill scam, I'm going to read, first of all, I want to read paragraph 7, a bit of paragraph 7, I won't read the whole thing, in the chapter on ornaments in general. So Bach is saying what he's going to do in this book. And so what he says is, Ich werde von einigen falschen oder wenigstens undeutlichen Zeichen, damit man sie von den rechten unterscheiden lerne, in gleichen von verwerflichen Manieren das Nötige erwähnen. So Bach says he's going to, questionable ornaments, he's going to mention the necessary or requisite. And I said when I was covering the Prall-Trill that he is unusually specific when talking about that. And I would say that is one of those questionable ornaments that he's talking about, the Prall-Trill. And he says he is going to mention what's necessary. So I would say Bach, one of those things that Bach is talking about is the Prall-Trill. And we covered one of the, when he's talking about the unclear signs, we saw a few of them, what he said he was going to do. One was the appoggiatura before a trill, that it's, if it's not meant to be treated as an appoggiatura, it's superfluous. That was one. And the other was the zigzag, the seconds with the line through at the end, and how that can be mistaken for a long mordant, and how he'd rather leave it as the zigzag sign without the line at the end, so it's not confused with the long mordant, which is addition shot confuse often. And then, yeah, so the questionable ornament, that will refer to the Prall-Trill that, you know, on the back of Bach's sonatas, the explanation of the trills, edition shots say that the first note should be tied, that you're not meant to play the first note. And there's an edition of this book. This from Bärenreiter is the facsimile of the first edition that Bach wrote. And there was a one put out my attention was drawn to it in 1905 or something, or in the early 1900s, by some Lilliput professor. And in there the text has been manipulated, where they say the two notes of the Prall-Trill are not to be played. And on one level, it was lucky that Lilliput is so incompetent, because he doctored the text, he manipulated the text, but he forgot to make everything plural. So he left the one bit singular where it should have been plural. And so the evidence of his tampering can be seen. And since all Lilliput follow Lilliput, they ignore the giants and they follow Lilliput. So they'll all follow this, these things. And I'm going to give Bach now the final say on that Prall-Trill scam. But what he says confirms everything I have said about that, and about, how disgusting the dishonesty is. And I am not talking about those people who've been fooled by those, and how deliberate it was as well. Everything I say will be confirmed. And I'm not talking about people who've been fooled by what Lilliput, what mediocrity he does. This is another example of where mediocrity attacks genius. And, people will have done admirable work, and they can see, if they don't get upset with me, and when you find out the truth, there's always an experience of loss. Because what happens when you find out the correct answer, when you find out the truth, all those false beliefs, you're going to experience a sense of loss, because they'll all be gone. And if you got your value out of those false beliefs or incorrect answers, you're going to experience a sense of loss, because what you thought made you important or valuable is gone. You'll feel poor. But it's just like that quote from Kierkegaard that I have at the beginning of my novel. Even if you were to gain tenfold from those incorrect or false beliefs, it'll be nothing to what you get when you escape the cage, when you enter the world of music, because what you will receive is infinity. So you can see how their manipulations mar your admirable work if you've been fooled by them or led astray by them. And so this is Bach's final say. And if I get up angry reading it, I don't know if it's me, if it's my anger that's coming out, or if it's Bach's anger. But here it is, paragraph 29 from the chapter of ornaments in general. Man wird aus dem Folgenden sehen, dass die dem zweiten Teile meiner Sonaten beigefügte Erklärung einiger Manieren, welche der Verleger unter meinen Namen, ob schon wieder meinen Willen und Wissen anzuhängen, sich nicht entblutet hat, falsch ist. That's what Bach has to say about that. And what did they do? Did they heed Bach? Did they respect him? And when he says they weren't ashamed, ashamed means exactly what I'm saying, that it's, about the dishonesty. You're only ashamed about a despicable act. You are not. There's nothing to feel ashamed about an innocent mistake or an oversight. There's no shame in that. But when you deliberately manipulate did that, and so what did they do? They followed those publishers who weren't ashamed to put under Bach's name, and they knew he knew nothing about it, and he didn't give his consent, and they put wrong explanations of the ornaments, and the one he's talking about is the Prall-Trill. This proves as well what I said. It's like Bach knew what Lilliput would do. It proves as well what I say about Lilliput then and now are exactly the same. And instead of correcting that, what did Lilliput do? They ran with Lilliput. And not only did they follow the publishers who are wrong, Bach says are wrong, not only do they follow them, and not just other publishers like Edition Shot, but all those Lilliput professors, all these people who should quit their jobs. They should quit. If you have have you any integrity, you'd quit your job now and give it to somebody who's able to teach people how to play the piano. They ran with it, and not only did they correct it, what they did was they dipped into Bach's book and changed that to suit them, to suit that incorrect explanation of the ornament. And why? Because they can't teach a Prall-Trill, because they can't play the piano, and they need to fool you into thinking they can do what they promise they can do, namely that they are able to teach you how to play the piano, but they can't. And you will leave them not knowing how to play the piano. I can teach you how to play the piano. The minimum, what you will get from what I am sharing, is virtuosity. That is the minimum every single person is going to gain from what I am sharing. And it is nothing at all like what you'll find on YouTube or anywhere else. This is unique. And so Bach goes on to say, he says, Ich bin hieran so unschuldig, als an der Herausgabe der im Lotterschen Katalogus aller musikalischen Bücher von diesem Jahre auf der 8. Seite unter meinem Vor- und Zunamen und folgendem merklichen Titel befindlichen 6 Sonates Nouveau per Cembalo 1751. Ich habe diese Sonaten noch nicht zu sehen bekommen können. Ich glaube aber ganz gewiss, dass sie mir entweder gar nicht zugehören oder dass es wenigstens alte und falsch geschriebene Stücke sein mögen. Wie es gemeiniglich zu geschehen pflegt, wenn jemand etwas heimlich erschleichert und hernach herausgibt. So Bach is saying, I am innocent. Don't look at me. And what's he comparing these publishers to? Criminal crooks, petty thieves, peasants who crawl around in the sewers like rats, stealing, whatever they can, the leftovers, rotting away in the cage, keeping you in there so they can feed off you, so they get their deck chair and margarita, because the cage is a miserable place. And they want to take from you to make their stay in the cage bearable. And they need you in the cage to go, well, the cage is not so bad because look at them. They're even worse than me. I have it good. They need to see other people in the cage who have it worse than them. Because if they were to only look outside the cage and see people in the world of music, then they well and truly realize the hell they actually are in. And they don't want that. So they want you with them. he calls them. So that's Bach's final say on the Prall-Trill. And like I said as well, when you have the correct answer, the evidence is everywhere. So it won't be the end of that. When I look at the the Prall and the Doppelschlag, I'll show, I'll put forward instances where that Lilliput, those Lilliput professors, the roll of honor that they can explain. They can talk their way out of it in their, in all their glory and intelligence and genius and insight and all those things that they tell you they have to fool you into following them. And what do? Mediocrity destroys, attacks and eradicates genius. So they are going to eradicate every scrap of genius in you when you let them get their hands on you. And there'll be nothing left when you go out there, and you'll spend your life a metronome. And one last thing. You saw all that there of how, just the depth at which, and this is not covering everything that Bach, how you can regard the score. This is just a part of what Bach has shared so far. And you can see the level of attention and how you see the score totally surpassing anything you'll hear from, in Juilliard or in, the Mozart theme in Salzburg, all these elite Lilliput universities. They fall way below this. And then you see on YouTube, you'll see all these videos saying how to, not make mistakes and how to be accurate, and they'll tell you to practice super slow and super accurate, and and give you all these exercises and ways to weed out the mistakes. But they'll say none of this. They don't understand the score or the details in the music at all. On this level, nowhere close to that at all. All they know is notes. That's it. And you could wonder, is this actually the way to be performing without mistakes? Perfection, where the no mistakes, it's not even a goal, it's just a byproduct. And that other stuff that you'll find on YouTube, on all those other channels, in no way does that or will that ever lead to being able to play the piano or being able to play without mistakes. Because if you have the insight, if you will see that none of those people with these channels are actually able to play the piano. None of them. They're all, in one way or the other, they're all crap. And that might be controversial, but I say that you could listen to this with your own self-interest. Forget about defending them. Forget about feeling offended on their behalf. Forget about, looking out for them, feeling sorry for them. Think about yourself and what you want. And you could wonder, is this the way to achieving accuracy? And is the other superficial, it has nothing to do with music. It has nothing. It's just dangling the carrot, putting you on the hamster wheel, telling you if you do that for the next 50 years of your life, eventually you'll be able to play a piece without a mistake in it, which you won't. You'll get to the end of that 50 years and you'll still be making mistakes. You still won't be able to play the piece. And you will think, they've stolen my life away from me. But when you're hearing this, you won't be able to blame them for stealing your life away, because you will have heard what it is. So, that's that thing that George Bush said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. When you know it's a scam, when you know you're being duped and you still go along with it, you still follow it, shame on you. You can't blame them for stealing the years of your life away. What you need to do is follow me and try what I am sharing and discover and escape the cage. Because you might get the wrong impression of me and think I love saying that about these people or feeling the miserable, like I make you feel miserable because I talk about the cage and all that, and you'll feel, he's just making me miserable. Well, I would never say such things if I was not providing you with the means to escape. That is why I say it, because if I didn't know how to escape the cage, I would never want to make you miserable in the cage. I only bring this up because I can get you out of it. You can escape with me. So just consider that. And think of what's absent. Who knows about the Einschnitt and Bar 4? You will not hear from any Lilliput professor in Juilliard or any of these places anything about the Einschnitt. And they will have not spotted that. And the half cadence there, they don't know. The only half cadence people, they don't know of that half cadence. In that figure 4b, Bach showed all the examples of the half cadences, and that last one is that half cadence where the top note does not land on the C. It's in C major, so it doesn't go to the C, it goes to the E, so the third above the C. And that will be considered a half cadence. None of Lilliput knows that. None of Lilliput can identify the Einschnitt, and none of Lilliput can defend their interpretations. And they can't prove Bach wrong when he calls them abgerichtete Vogel, or trained birds, because that's what birds do. They, and those who fall for it, those audience members who applaud the cult of themselves, it's like it's the equivalent. They think they're not listening to an artist, they're listening to a trained bird who's just done what it's told to do, who just copies what it's heard and has no clue as to why or what it's doing. And those audience members clapping and thinking maybe, what a genius. They are getting fooled on the level that if they heard a parrot saying E equals MC squared, they'd applaud that parrot and say what a genius that parrot is, because they think that parrot actually knows what he's talking about when he says E equals MC squared, but he doesn't. All he's doing is saying what he has been trained to say. But they call him a genius because they think he is actually saying E equals MC squared because he worked it out in his head. And that's what you're talking about with Lilliput and the roll of honor. You'll be thinking they're geniuses, but they're just trained birds. And proof is they can't defend their interpretation. And you can check now, with everything I've covered, you can check and see just how much do they do incorrectly. And which interpretation is actually Mozart. The one that is in agreement with everything, that coincides with everything Bach says, or the one that doesn't coincide with a single thing Bach says. And remember, Mozart said to Bach, "You are the father, we are the children. Anybody who knows anything at all about music knows it because of you. And anybody who doesn't admit this is a bleep." And you can insert any words you like there to describe those. And I would put those publishers in that company, what Mozart is talking about, because he's not the friend of Lilliput, he's not the friend of the Roll of Honor, he's the friend of Bach. And he'll have the same opinion about them as Bach does. And who do you want to side with? Because Lilliput will always, the Roll of Honor, they're always going to look stupid. That's why the only option they have with me is to try and, pretend I don't exist, ignore me, and hope everybody else ignores me. because it would be great if there could be a reaction video to any of this, and you see the faces of the experts and they see just how wrong they are, how clueless they are. You would see that on their faces and they would have nothing. And if you follow them, you're always going to end up embarrassed. Somebody like me will come along and you'll have nothing. And you'll realise that Lilliput, the roll of honour, have just thrown you under the bus. Because they run, they're cowardly. They run. They would never acknowledge anything that I say or anything I do. So, that was the masterclass, Bach's masterclass on Mozart's Sonata in B flat major, K281. There's definitely something there to consider and try for yourself if you were interested in giving that movement or that sonata a go. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.